There's been a massive lack of information out there in our social media feeds, especially about the fantastic work that people are doing in the space. And so we're really happy to be part of the solution. So this series is meant to be a platform for champions of industry to from government relations, policy, regulatory teams to share their take on best practices and overcoming challenges and educating others. And if you're a fan of the chat, please feel free to share, join in the conversation as you see fit. So just a few housekeeping rules. For those who are not familiar, it's a 30-minute session. There's 5 minutes for Q&A at the end, and there's a Q&A box in the chat, so you can take a look and navigate to it now. There's a recording to be shared after the event, and if you're a live tweeter, you can always tweet us #Fireside Chats, and our handle is @Knowit, GNOWIT. And also, if you're interested in becoming a speaker, you can always send us an email to hello@knowit.com, and there's always different topics and industries. Really, the goal is to share as many insights as possible. For those who don't know me, I'm your host, Tan Sakara, the VP of Insights at Knowit Inc. We're always and still are improving and eager to learn, so we really do welcome your feedback. Now, this talk is powered by Knowit Inc. And for those who don't know, we're a media, regulatory, and business intelligence company, and we use AI and machine learning to actively search federal, provincial, and municipal government sources of information online. And that includes the Hansard, the Parliament, gazettes, committees, debates, requests for consultations, and more. And you can always visit www.knowit.com for more information. So it's that time again now where I have the pleasure of introducing our speaker for episode 8, Building a Strong GR Presence in Ottawa. We've got Magessa with us today. He's an accomplished government relations professional with over 12 years of experience in policy and regulation with the federal government as well as with industry, advocating on Parliament Hill, as well as representing an industry point of view with various stakeholders. Now, he currently leads the Chamber of Marine Commerce, Government and Stakeholder Relations, advancing the marine industry's interests at the federal and provincial levels. And prior to his current role, Magessa was most recently Director of Government Affairs at the Canadian Wireless Telecommunications Association, leading efforts for advocacy in the federally regulated telecommunications sector, and developing policy and objectives and political messaging that's aimed at all levels of government. Magessa has a master's certificate in public management from the Schulich School of Business at Carleton University. He holds a master's in public affairs and international affairs from York University and a bachelor's of economics and political science from the University of Laval in Quebec City. Without any further ado, take it away, Magessa.
Well, thank you, Tan, for this introduction. I really appreciate it. And it's an absolute pleasure to be here this afternoon to talk about GR, and especially in this time of election. It's a really exciting time for the folks like me who just enjoy politics. But today's talk is really a presentation that I want to provide a quick overview of the strategy I use to build, develop, and roll out a governmental relation campaign in Ottawa. And I'm not sharing the good screen, am I? I'm sorry. What's that? You're seeing my text and not the PowerPoint?
No. Oh, we can see you. We can see you just fine. Thanks so much, Magessa. Yeah, you're sharing the screen there. We can see the Hill, the bureaucracy, charity and education, and public relations.
My bad. So I mean, yeah, my strong side is the politics side. I guess the technology is still following. So, anyways, today's talk. So strategy I use to build, develop, and roll out a governmental relation campaign in Ottawa. So although the needs and goals of organization active on Parliament Hill vary wildly, I do believe the framework I use is versatile and can be adapted to a series of possibilities. Building a successful campaign on Parliament Hill not only relies on meeting MPs, their staff, and relevant ministers, it must be part of a holistic approach to managing an image. The goals being to elevate in the most positive light as possible one's priorities in the public eye, as well as with elected and nominated public officials. The idea is to use this positive momentum and perception and translate them into better results when advocating for your priorities with these officials. So as we see on the graphic, the Hill component of a GR campaign is really one part of the campaign. The other parts, although I mean equally important, are the bureaucracy, charity and education, and public relations. And all of them must be tackled to increase your odds of running a successful campaign. And we'll dive in more details on the Hill aspect shortly. But before, I would like to highlight the importance of having a good relationship with public servants, working constantly to building a positive image with the public in general, as well as maintaining linkages with educational facilities, researchers, and finally having a charitable presence. So the public administration in Ottawa is a strong component of public policy and most importantly, a very stable one. Politicians come and go, governments are voted in and out, but public servants tend to stick around. The obvious stop of any campaign in Ottawa are the most senior level. Deputy ministers and their assistants come to mind. Although they often change departments and solely have a bird's eye view on any issue, they are important in any briefing strategy so that they are aware of the point of view that you're advocating for, either from a client or an organizational perspective. They are also important for the role they play in setting trends and priorities in a department. A conversation with them not only puts forward your priorities, it's a chance of obtaining feedback from senior decision makers. This information can be useful to better understand and predict how a public service will deal with your files. One could certainly argue these high-level meetings can mostly be ceremonial in nature, and you wouldn't be far from reality. As DM and ADMs and their teams try to limit ministerial exposure to issues, you must tread carefully. You are dealing with a pyramidal decision-making process which they govern, thus making them an important stop in any advocacy campaign. To cover all bases and engage with the pen holders at the policy or program level, I would also strongly encourage to engage with the directorates within departments. Your usual target in this circumstance would be a director in charge of the program governing the industry you are representing. These conversations can yield good information on the department perspective on a specific issue, provide targeted timelines, as well as foreseen policy changes. More progressive departments also engage directly with the industry or stakeholders through various working groups. Although these are typically highly staged events, it is important to engage and take as much information in and take every opportunity to voice your perspective on the issue of the day, as you never know when you're going to be the catch of the day. In any event, it's good practice to build your network, to keep on top of files, and have access to as many contact points as possible. Staying tuned in the federal bureaucracy is therefore an essential step in building and maintaining your presence in Ottawa. The next step on our campaign is public relations. As we know, politicians govern mostly by following their base and the public opinion on issues. For the better or the worse, it's none of the less important to position one's issue positively in the public eye. A strong campaign on the Hill should be supported by a presence in the public sphere through advertisement campaigns highlighting the positive impacts of an industry on its workforce, the public, the economy, and the environment. The end goal of this strategy is to shift the public perception on an issue in order to tone down critics so the Hill component of our strategy faces less hurdle. This positive image we are building for an industry or a corporation can also be helped by putting together a good charitable campaign. So we just seen several corporations do this during the Olympic and Paralympic Games, or again with ongoing campaign helping on various social issues. These efforts go hand in hand with a strong public relations strategy as they build and maintain a positive image in the public sphere. Perception plays a major role on the Hill, and a charitable campaign goes a long way in building a positive image of an industry. So the last stop in our overall strategy to build a strong presence in Ottawa is the collaboration with educational facilities and researchers. This can certainly be adjusted depending on the industry, but a good relationship with these actors can be fruitful. First off, an industry needs a stream of qualified candidates to fill employment opportunities. In this tough job market for employers, an industry should be mindful in encouraging young and older workers to learn specific skills that will help the industry conduct business. The educational relationship can also be one based on sponsoring research and development to remain competitive on the global scale. Overall, the funding of research and development in educational facilities is a good way to increase positive outcome for the industry. Research can also help in advocacy, especially when an industry faces criticism for any given issue. It will need a certain level of brain trust to lead a strong counter-argument and advance its interest. The research can also yield positive results in the reduction of the carbon footprint of an industry or developing new technologies, fuels, or products. So if we move on to our second slide, and it's basically back to our main event, the establishment and maintenance of an ongoing presence on Parliament Hill. So from an outside perspective, one could see this presence as being governed by the issue of the day. A client or a member will mostly be focusing on the Hill when a given legislation is stable, a committee is studying a particular topic of interest, or an MP has spoken or misspoke during question period. Private members' bill and motion can also raise outside attention toward your GR responsibilities. Even senators can raise the profile of a certain file at any given time. Although this perspective from outside stakeholders is motivated by genuine interest to take part and voice one's opinion in the House proceeding, this should certainly not be your first interaction with members of Parliament. It is primordial to educate clients and members on the need to build and maintain an ongoing presence in Ottawa. Although the level of investment in building relationship on the Hill will undoubtedly vary based on the political landscape and environment, benefits from ongoing efforts will be higher with persistence rather than sporadic presence. A strong GR presence is needed as soon as a new government or a new session starts. This is done to build, reinforce, and maintain a positive image with MPs and their staff. By doing so, you will quickly find out who potential allies can be, as well as hear from foes. You will also hear criticism and comments MPs hear from their constituents. Working in solving or reducing these pain points go toward building a positive image, thus increasing the likelihood of a positive outcome for your party, or at least alleviate negative effects. In any case, this is a long game that requires persistence. The information collected during meetings on the Hill can help strengthen your case as you refine your argument to be most effective with a given audience. Using comments to adjust your research or realign your GR strategy can help in advancing your files. This is a long-term strategy that must be carried throughout the parliamentary session and repeated year over year. As time passes and you work diligently to build and maintain your client or organizational image on the Hill, MPs and their staff will come to know you. They may even ask you to appear at committees or voice your position, and then they will reach out again for having more information. It's important to highlight to your clients and members that it is not done overnight. MPs come and go, and the basic briefing on issues must be repeated as needed. Over time, you will establish a brand recognition that will come handy in advocating and advancing constructive policies. So moving on to our Rolodex. So in order to reach out, you'll need to get it out and start cold calling. And as a good fisherman, you'll cast multiple lines in the water, and you will show patience and persistence in arranging meetings with a targeted list of relevant offices. It is important to keep an eye out for staff changes in ministerial as well as MP offices, as they change frequently. I like to use GETS, the governmental phone book, to find contact information on specific offices. This target list we will be putting together will vary based on your advocacy campaign, but it should nonetheless regroup a large group of public officials that have some degree of influence on your key issues. At the top of the list, we'll find the minister or ministers responsible for the relevant act you are dealing with and its enabling powers to enact regulations. The ministerial meeting is generally high level and serves at putting your advocacy campaign on the ministerial radar. You should really not skip on establishing more frequent meetings with the minister's key staff members that will be responsible for your file, as well as parliamentary and communication directors, as they will be among the first to have key documents such as press releases and copies of bills to be tabled, not to mention regulations. And next on our list are committee members. So reflecting on the proportion of the House, committee members from all parties should be met as soon as the session starts so that your briefings are understood and your position known. Key figures as the opposition critic, the shadow ministers, the chair of the committee, and MPs with known position are also important and play a significant role in shaping the committee's agenda and especially its upcoming studies. And it's even more important in a minority government where the balance of power really shifts. So as the session advances, you will want to pay a cordial visit to the official opposition leader's office, the government in waiting, as well as the leaders of the Bloc Québécois, the NDP, and the Greens, given if it's the issue, of course, is not too contentious. The House Leader's Office is also an important stop, similarly to a ministerial meeting. It'll be a high-level dialogue and serves at positioning and putting your advocacy campaign on the parliamentary radar. The role of the Senate is one that is changing since 2015 with the introduction of the independent senators. This new dynamic has yet to settle completely, and its long-term effects are still unknown. So depending on priorities, the legislative agenda and committee's interest, one should certainly keep in mind that a vote in the Senate is still required to advance legislation, as the last government had a taste of this bittersweet reality. All these efforts to meet and greet elected and public officials will certainly yield positive results. To maximize outcome, I always reach out to my counterparts and members' organization staff or with other likely-minded organizations. There are many advantages to talk with peers. First off, it's yet another opportunity to discuss the latest trends on the Hill, which is always fun for Politico. But more importantly, it will provide a sounding board if you face difficulty in an outreach campaign. For instance, if you encounter difficulties talking with a particular member of cabinet or a directorate within the public service, knowing that a counterpart in the GR world is going through similar problems should help make sense of the situation. It's also an opportunity to exchange notes on certain staff members, MPs, or public servants that are of interest. Again, it's also helpful to hear what others are doing to advance their priorities and see what strategy works with certain officials. To help guide my strategy on certain files, I also use the lobby registry to refine my choices when reaching out. I'll look at who's been talking to whom to better target my meetings and make sure I'm following up with officials that generate meetings in a particular field of interest. So moving up to our fourth slide, it's a good time to take a step back and ask ourselves, what purpose our meeting on the Hill serve? As we saw earlier, they must come together with an overarching strategy to establish and maintain a positive image with the public as well as with elected and public office holders. With this in mind, we want to start our Hill campaign with a good vibe, and what could be better than a strong economic and environmental contribution in these important times? I always recommend to paint a positive image of an industry, showing its contribution to the GDP, jobs, and other relevant metrics, as well as its ongoing efforts to fight climate change. The latter is included because it's a defining issue of our time, and it's very much present in the public discourse, both in the public and private sector. To develop these crucial metrics, one should look at third-party economic analysis firms or academic researchers to make sure the data used is solid and reliable. This is very important, as you can expect your data to be scrutinized by people working on the other side of the issue you are advocating for. Once this image of a strong corporate citizen is established, it's a good opportunity to highlight how one client or membership could contribute further to the development of the country if only this or that regulation, legislation, or other hurdle could be somewhat toned down. It's crucial to be ready for criticism and, of course, have solution or path forwards to alleviate these concerns. It is the reality that not all of them can be handled at once, but showing an open mind and a desire to find a mutually agreeable solution is generally well received. As we move on, our campaign continues. New challenges, ideas, development, and policies will occur, and you must adjust the messaging to keep up with these developments. So based on the feedback you will be receiving from your membership and clients, as well as with the information from other GR leads, you must adapt the messaging, so it's crucial that it always look as you are on the top of the issue. This is also a great opportunity to loop back with MPs and their staff that have shown interest in the file. Keeping them updated on the latest development is a good way to keep connected. So finally, I cannot stress enough the fact that keeping a macroscopic vision of the role and importance of a file in the political landscape is crucial. You cannot control the environment and the events that will be shaping policies, but you may have some influence in shaping how your project is perceived by public officials. So keeping in mind in leading a campaign on the Hill while simultaneously applying efforts with the bureaucracy and the public will increase your odds of obtaining a positive outcome. So that's all for today's topic. I would like to thank Tan and his team for giving me the opportunity to speak to you today. And feel free to contact me with any questions, and the question we'll be taking now.
Okay, great, guys. So let's open it up for Q&A. There are a few questions that have been coming in. I just want to, all right. So maybe we can start with this question here. So what is the best way to get information on files? Is it by talking with public servants or ministerial staff members?
Well, I think it's really by talking with folks that are responsible for the file or evolves around it. And it's a matter of keeping in touch with the people you meet or reaching out when you need information. Coming in with as much information as possible that you are aware of, and then asking the questions on where the file is going or any relevant information you would be looking for. So really keeping in touch with the folks you know that are involved in a specific file, either in the public servant side of things or on the political side, or both at the same time, so you get as much information as possible.
So thank you for that. There's also another question here. It says, how have you adjusted your strategies now that most of the contact kind of outreach is done virtually?
Yeah, well, that was a tough one to get used to. And I especially remember at the beginning of the pandemic, reaching out to senators, especially. And I mean, they're on the older side of the spectrum, I guess. And it came with its difficulties on the technicalities just by like installing Zoom and the like. I know it was a problem for some. But now most people are just assuming this will go on for a certain time. And I imagine in the future, although I would be glad to meet in person again, that we will see some sort of hybrid format to be established where it's just easier to meet several people in one day by just doing it remotely.
100%. So we're just going to wrap up with a final question here. It says, we may be able to see a minority government elected again on September 20th. Would you say that it's easier or harder to lobby in these type of conditions?
Yeah, well, it's certainly tougher to govern, and I mean, we'll see how it pans out. This campaign is nothing like I was expecting, or I think most people out there following Canadian politics are really surprised by how events have been unfolding. But yeah, we're certainly being treated to a good campaign. But going on, it's the same routine that has to apply. I mean, you still got to meet the folks that are responsible for files that are pertaining to a particular subject of interest, and you got to brief them and keep in touch to get an understanding of where things are going. But it's certainly tougher, especially on the legislative side, to do anything. So I would expect a slower parliament, as we've seen in the last 2 years. It's just a tougher environment for the government to pass legislation. But I mean, I would expect like a regulation to still go ahead and take place. So I mean, you still got to be out there and talk with folks.
Well, thank you so much for all of that. That was an incredibly insightful talk. And thank you for all the audience members for joining us today, this afternoon. Wish everybody, a great afternoon ahead.
Thank you, Tam.